Imagine you're walking alone in the dusk. A gentle wind stirs the trees. The day fades softly into shadow. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good." What if contemplating our own mortality could bring us peace instead of fear? Throughout his private journals, which came to be known as meditations, Marcus returned again and again to the subject of death. You could leave life right now, he reminded himself. Let that determine what you do and say and think. For the Stoics, an awareness of death was not intended to provoke anxiety or despair. Rather, it was seen as an essential practice for living virtuously and with purpose. Marcus saw death as an integral part of nature, not a violation of it. What we cannot bear removes us from life, he observed. What remains can be born. Change, he argued, is nature's delight. Just as the leaves wither and return to the earth each fall, just as the bloom of youth gives way to the gray of old age, so too does each human life come to its rightful end in the vast cycles of time. We suffer only to the extent that we cling to illusion, the illusion of permanence in a world of ceaseless change. Loss is nothing else than change, Marcus wrote. But the universal nature delights in change, and in obedience to her, all things are now done well, and from eternity have been done in like form, and will be such to time without end. Once we accept the essential transience of all things, we cannot be diminished by it. The body, Marcus reminded himself, is little more than blood, bones, and breath. It is the ruling faculty of the mind that is our true essence. Such as are your habitual thoughts, such also will be the character of your mind, for the soul is dyed by the thoughts. Even as the body perishes and returns to dust, the logos, the divine fire of reason, endures. All that comes to pass is already woven with your destiny, Marcus believed. Each of us arrives when it is our time, lingers in life for a breath, and at the appointed hour passes on. It is senseless to rail against providence. How many with whom I came into the world are already gone out of it, he mused. The same fate awaits us all, emperors and beggars alike. In contrast to the Stoic view, our modern world goes to great lengths to deny death. We worship youth, hide old age, and relegate the dying to hospitals, as if mortality was a contagion to be quarantined at all costs. But for Marcus, the practice of accepting and even welcoming one's inevitable end was essential to living rightly. He urged himself and others to contemplate death daily, not from a place of morbidity, but from a desire to cherish the present and to act with justice and honor in all things. Let each thing you would do, say, or intend be like that of a dying person, Marcus counseled. Death strips away all dissembling and compels us to face what truly matters. As an emperor and a general, Marcus had countless encounters with death. He saw soldiers fall on the battlefield, sentenced rivals to execution, and watched those he loved succumb to plague and illness. At every turn, the same truth emerged for him. It is not death that a man should fear, but rather he should fear never beginning to live. Marcus likened the human experience to a river, constantly flowing and changing. Time is like a river, made up of the events which happen, and a violent stream. For as soon as a thing has been seen, it is carried away, and another comes in its place, and this will be carried away too. Just as one cannot step in the same river twice, each moment of life is fleeting and unrepeatable. This might seem like cause for despair, but for Marcus, it was an invitation to live more intentionally. The perfection of moral character consists in this, he wrote, in passing every day as the last, and in being neither violently excited, nor torpid, nor playing the hypocrite. When we recognize the brevity and uncertainty of existence, we are compelled to ask ourselves what truly matters and to act accordingly. One of Marcus's most striking meditations on mortality likens human life to a ripening fruit. The fruit does not cling to the branch, anxious that it might fall. It swells and sweetens until, at the proper hour, it drops effortlessly to the earth. With this analogy, Marcus describes the most dignified way to approach death, not with resentment or panic, but with quiet acquiescence. The fruit, he reminds us, has another duty. It contains within itself the seed that will become the next generation. The tree itself may perish, but its essence endures through its offspring. In the same way, we cannot grasp and hold our individual lives, but we can embody the Logos, and in doing so, achieve a kind of immortality. The person passes away, but the principles and the virtues they stood for are imperishable. These virtues, among them justice, truth, temperance, and courage, are the only thing worth perfecting in Marcus's view. Unlike wealth, reputation, or power, our character is the one thing we can work to improve until the very end of life. Let the spirit that dwells within you be undisturbed by outward happenings, he told himself, and devote itself to practicing justice, temperance, and courage. At the heart of the Stoic worldview lies faith in a rational universe. Our lives are woven already with destiny as part of a pattern too vast for us to perceive in full. The Logos that animates us, the bright spark of consciousness, is of a piece with the Logos that governs all of nature. When our time comes, we dissolve back into the elements. But this divine fire is eternal. There is no place for fear. Marcus often reflected on the impermanence of worldly accomplishments. Consider the lives of those who once shone bright with glory, or were weighed down with calamity, he wrote. Then reflect that the memory of them barely lasts a single generation before it fades into legend, then myth, then oblivion. In light of this, he asked, how could one be attached to status or reputation? The practice of memento mori, remembering we must die, was a cornerstone of Stoic philosophy. Through it, the fleeting nature of earthly life is brought into stark perspective. What matters is not the length of one's life, but the quality of one's character. It is not death that a man should fear, Marcus maintained, but he should fear never beginning to live. This might make Stoicism seem a grim philosophy, but its adherents found in it a path to freedom and even joy. By continually confronting death, they could relish life all the more when it was returned to them each dawn. When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love, Marcus wrote. The poignancy of existence is heightened by its very transience. As he neared the end of his life, having served Rome for decades as a wise and just ruler, Marcus took comfort in knowing he had held true to his deepest values. Take your joy in simplicity, modesty, and indifference to all that lies between virtue and vice, he encouraged himself. A life of good character was the only true wealth, the only thing we can carry with us into death's waiting arms. It's remarkable to think that these private reflections, scrawled during battle campaigns in the quiet hours of the night, would still be offering solace and guidance centuries later. In a way, it affirms Marcus's trust that while the body perishes, the Logos endures. The compassionate rationality of his meditations has proven to be a sort of philosophical offspring, continuing his legacy long after his physical form returned to dust. Perhaps this, too, can provide a metaphor for how we might conceive of death. While Marcus lay dying, as plagues racked Rome, as wars continued to rage, did he despair of the futility of it all? The record suggests that he did not. He did what he could with the life he was granted and released the rest. He had planted seeds of wisdom that would outlast him. He had faced his mortality with honesty and used it to become a humane, humble, diligent soul. In the end, it was enough. How might our lives change if we adopted Marcus Aurelius's perspective on mortality? Not as a grim shadow to recoil from, but as an invitation to grow in wisdom. Perhaps we could greet grief with more tenderness, knowing it is the price of connection. Perhaps we could release anxiety over status or wealth, recalling that they are temporary and meaningless to the dead. Perhaps we could risk more vulnerability, forgive more freely, love more boldly while we still can. One practice Marcus recommends is a nightly evening reflection. Before sleep, we might imagine the day as if it had been our last, reviewing our thoughts, words, and deeds to see how well they align with our highest principles. Did we act with integrity, compassion, reason? Did we make good use of our hours? What would we do differently if we could live the day again? The Stoics also advocated for a practice called pre-immeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. This involves contemplating potential losses or misfortunes in advance, imagining how we would respond to them with courage and evenness of temper. By preparing the mind for adversity, we diminish its power to shake us. We can extend this practice to our own death, accepting it as natural and inevitable, and thus reducing our distress at its approach. As we move through life, Marcus believed that we must learn to relinquish our attachments lightly. Even cherished things like education and beauty cannot detain us past our time. Discard your thirst for books so you may die in peace, he urged, not in vexation that you fall short of the truth. The Logos moves in us when we stop clinging to the past or reaching anxiously for the future. It is found in the graceful acceptance of all that was, all that is, and all that will be. As we contemplate the reality that one day we will take our leave of life, it invites us to consider what matters most. What legacy do we want to leave in the hearts of those we touched? How can we use this precious time to be good, as Marcus puts it, to become a bit wiser, a bit kinder, a bit more equanimous? Not despite death, but because of it, we can commit to being present, to living justly, and to honoring the utter impermanence of things. Marcus Aurelius lived in a world very different from our own, but his advice remains startlingly relevant. In a society that often chases after ephemeral and ultimately unsatisfying things, memento mori can be a powerful corrective. It restores perspective and imbues even the humblest action with significance. If we live each day as if it is our final gift, imagine the care and reverence we will bring to it. Imagine the love we will offer while we have the chance. Picture a candle burning steadily in the darkness. It asks for nothing, fears nothing. It does not recoil from the inevitability of its own guttering out. It has already offered its light and its warmth to the world without reservation. As we watch its flame flicker, we might reflect, if we truly knew our days to be numbered, if we understood our lives to be a gift freely bestowed and soon reclaimed, how would we live? What would we do with this one fierce and precious existence? Marcus Aurelius's meditations have endured not because he was an emperor, but because he was a man who looked unflinchingly at life, and dared to ask such questions. He greeted death as an old friend, neither hastening nor delaying their reunion. And in doing so, he showed us a path to living with authenticity, virtue, and grace. But there is another foe that haunted Marcus, even before death made its claim, a more insidious enemy that lurks in the shadows of every human mind, our own thoughts. In our next exploration, we'll see how this great Stoic battled the noise within, and in mastering it, taught us all how to live more serenely. Until then, memento mori.